It is finally over. The Neil Brown era is officially behind West Virginia and moving on to Rich Rod 2.0. And yes, I know Neil Brown didn't coach in the game last night, but let's face it, that was his product. That was his team. He just wasn't on the sidelines calling plays. Um, Welcome in, everyone, to this morning's episode of Between the Ears. Make sure you hit the subscribe button here on our YouTube page at West Virginia on SI. A little programming note for those that maybe have been starting to file into our show here in the last week or so with all the Rich Rodriguez news and stuff. We usually tape on or release these episodes on Sunday, Tuesday, and Wednesday throughout football season. The plan is moving forward to continue to do so through the end of basketball. However, with this week coming up, obviously the game on Sunday and the holidays coming up, we're going to tape on Monday, and then we will come back the following Sunday and get back on our normal schedule. So just one episode coming up after this one, unless something happens, of course. If there's any news, any breaking news of any significance, then obviously we'll make sure we get an episode out as quickly as we possibly can. So, anyways, back to last night. We'll talk a little bit about that game, reflect on the season as a whole, and moving forward into the offseason, what some of the checklist items are out there for Rich Rodriguez and his staff that he is currently trying to piece together. So, last night, 42-37 in the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl. Initial thoughts was that I was surprised that the team continued to play as hard as they did. And I don't have any regret in saying that in my initial thought article, although a lot of people say, well, not the defense, not the defense. There is a major difference between playing hard and giving up points and yards and not playing hard and giving up points and yards. Those guys last night, even though they were giving up points and yards, were playing hard. You could see the strain, you could see the effort. There was just still a lot of issues that the same issues that have been happening all season long occurred again last night. Miscommunication, some missed tackles, poor angling, not getting a whole lot of pressure on the quarterback, just a lot of different things, miss gaps or misfitting gaps. So it wasn't a matter of guys not playing hard or giving maximum effort. You go back and watch the tape, you will see strain on the defensive side. Was it efficient? No. I mean, that's clear as day. Anytime you give up, what was it, 474 yards of total offense, it's not good. But the effort was there. Even when they fell down 17-0, they got to stop in the first half. They got to stop some point in the midway through the third quarter. They were still giving effort. And I know it sounds like that should be the guarantee, but when you're talking about a game like this, in a situation where you're in a bowl game that you don't really want to be in, all due respect to Scooters Coffee and in the Frisco Bowl, but you don't want to be there. Your head coach gets fired 2 weeks ago. A lot of thoughts are entering your head. Are these other coaches on staff that I really like, are they going to go? Am I going to have to go because maybe the new coaching staff doesn't want to be here? Heck, maybe I don't even want to be here. There's a lot of things that are being tossed around in your head. And for them to fall behind 17-0 and continue to fight, again, even defensively, it may not have been a good product, but the strain and the effort was there. To me, that was a really good sign. Whether that's for Chad Scott, the interim head coach, who clearly had the players' focus, the rest of the coaching staff who had these guys locked in throughout bowl prep, or maybe even for Rich Rodriguez, who's going to carry some of this roster over into 2025. And he even said it himself. He said that he saw a lot of good, hard playing effort last night during the broadcast. So that's number one. Number two, as I talked about it also last night on the post-game show with Eugene, Garrett Greene is going to have this weird kind of legacy. You know, he's going to be remembered because he was an electrifying player with his legs, and more so last season he could really carve you up deep in the deep ball passing game, and he was kind of a hit or miss, right? It was a Jekyll and Hyde. You didn't really know what Garrett you're going to get. last night, he was phenomenal. You take the interception, throw it out, doesn't matter. 328 yards, two touchdowns, 29 of 40. His most efficient passing game of the season, outside of Albany, which I could care less about. Um, just phenomenal. Really felt like he was consistent in his footwork and his release. Really good decision making for the most part. Missed a couple of throws early, but started to catch his rhythm there towards the end of the first quarter and into the second quarter as well. So I thought he had a tremendous game, 95 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Again, the interception, it happens. I think the ball may potentially have been tipped at the line of scrimmage, um, or by a linebacker. It looked like it fluttered a little bit. So I have to go back and watch it on the tape, but it did look like that was the case. Either way, he was trying to make a play, and you score 37 points. That's enough to win a ball game, right? You can't give up 42. I mean, you give up 40 plus points in a game, doesn't matter who you're playing, you're probably going to lose. So the offense, in my opinion, again, did enough to win the game. Defensively is where the issues lie. So I'm going to kind of take a small step ahead here and kind of skip over reflecting on the season for just 1 second. That's the one thing, in my humble opinion, that Rich Rodriguez and his staff need to address first and foremost is the speed of the defense. Obviously, you need corners. Obviously, you need safeties. Obviously, you need a replacement for Josiah Trotter. You obviously need a replacement for TJ Jackson and maybe Eddie Vesterinen and Fator Mulba. But you need to populate that defense with more speed. There is no way they can enter the season with the same level of speed or slightly better. They have to get incredibly faster, incredibly quick. That cannot be the same product that you see rolled out there in 2025. Going back now to this season, it's four losing seasons in 6 years for Neil Brown and this coaching staff. Again, going back to the Duke's Mayo Bowl last year, you win, and it felt like everything was just starting to turn the corner, right? You got 9 wins, probably should have had 10. You should have beat Houston. Heck, you probably even should have beat Oklahoma State. We know what happens there. But you still get to 9 wins. You still feel good about the direction of the program. You have Garrett Greene coming back. You have all these pieces coming back offensively. You feel like you added some good pieces in the portal. And there's all this momentum gaining in the offseason because you feel like for the first time under Neil Brown, you have something. And the Penn State game was the perfect example as to what was going to follow the rest of the year. All this momentum built up for one game, flat performance. Absolutely flat. 2 weeks later in the backyard brawl, again, we all know what happens there. You blow a 10-point lead with 3 minutes and some change left. Once again, a big-time game, you fall short or have in somewhat of a flat performance defensively. Start to win a couple games, the momentum builds back up. Iowa State comes along. Cole Rush, all this great feeling. Lay an egg offensively. The very next week, I know Neil Brown and a lot of those players and staff inside that building will say they really thought they had a chance to beat Kansas State. If you look at the score at halftime, they certainly had a chance. And even without the injuries, I still don't know that happens. Kansas State really just kind of helped West Virginia stay in that game, if you remember. Garrett Greene threw some interceptions. The defense didn't look very good. The offense was out of sync. It just felt like it was spiraling or snowballing towards the result it ended up being with the injuries. Another flat performance. Win some games again, Arizona. Or excuse me, not Arizona. Texas Tech at the end of the season. You feel like Baylor. I'm all over the place. You feel like you're catching some momentum again. You can maybe match your win total from last year. and the defense can't get off the field. And the season, same thing, complete, utter chaos. Defensively, you give up 50 some points. And the season, disappointment. It felt like every time this team played somebody with a pulse, not Oklahoma State, who had a winless record in Big 12 play, not Cincinnati, who started out 5-2 and ended up not even making a bowl, not UCF, who fired their coach and missed out on a bowl, not Albany, not Arizona that missed out on a bowl. Any team that had a pulse, they either had a flat performance or they shot themselves in the foot and lost the game. That was the case again last night. You just can't give up 42 points. Can't. Memphis is a really good team. I know you can dive into the schedule and say, well, they didn't really play anybody. They had one of the weakest schedules in all of college football. Yeah, but they still beat Tulane. They still had to go out there and win 10 games to get to this point. They were a trendy playoff pick in the G5 almost all season long until they had their two losses. This is a good team. An experienced quarterback in Seth Hennigan. It's just a team that, in my opinion, fell way short of expectations, obviously. But I think it really all started with the Penn State game. And really good teams can suffer a loss in week one, especially to a top 5 or top 10 perceived team, and bounce back and go on to win the league. That's very possible, even with the flat performance that they had. But I truly believe that they just never bounced back from the Penn State game. Everyone talks about the backyard brawl, and I'll get to that in just one second. But the Penn State game, to me, it felt like they thought going in they were going to win this game against Penn State, shock the world, and all of a sudden have everyone's attention. And here we go. The CFP hype is following its way to Morgantown. And when they got beat as bad as they did, it was a major hit to their confidence. And then I think what really did them in was the backyard brawl. That was kind of the extra punch, the dagger, so to speak. And now you're 1-2, and now you feel like, well, damn, like we have to win the league now to get to the college football playoff. And that put a lot of pressure on them. Luckily, they got a couple of easier games at the beginning of this Big 12 schedule. They had Kansas before they got humming. They got Oklahoma State, who never got humming at all. And that kind of maybe kept them humming a little bit. But if you think about it, they should have lost to Kansas. They were down 11. So if they don't make that comeback, then we can get to a bowl game. It was just a season filled of disappointment. You know, Neil Brown talked about, in the offseason how Garrett Greene was a top 100 player in the country. He didn't play like it. And how is it that Garrett Greene had the season that he did last year and took a step back as a passer? That's an indictment on the development of him as a quarterback, on the coaching staff. That can't happen. Yeah, sure, he bumped up his completion percentage by what, 2 or 3 points? Does it really matter if he like dang near tripled his interception total? No, it doesn't at all. It was just a perfect picture of what the Neil Brown era was and what it would probably have been had he remained on in Morgantown. 6-7, just average football. And you can't be average 6 years in, especially when you've been average the first 5 years or for the first 5 years. There's no grace period. You don't get a down year because, it's year 6 and everyone has a down year now and then. No, not when you've had 4 of your first 5 years as considered down years. Can't happen. So flipping it over to Rich Rodriguez, this is, I think, again, we've touched on this many times. It's so weird because you see Rich Rod doing these interviews. You saw him on the game last night. You heard him on the MSN broadcast. You see him down there on the field, and you see him giving Nico Marchiol a hug, and it's just like, holy crap, this is really weird. Never really thought that this would be possible. but it feels like this is the most energy, excitement, hype, whatever word you want to throw in there around this football program. I'd say probably since 2018. Maybe you can go back further, but I think there was a lot of hype going into that 2018 year with Will Greer, David Sills, Gary Jennings, all that high powered offense coming back with Dana. But it just feels a little bit different than 2018 because you feel like there's something more there than just the players coming back and your prospects about next season being really good. It feels like you're going to be truly building towards something, and it's going to be a completely different style, a completely different brand of football. What you saw last night in the Frisco Bowl is something you're never going to see again, at least under Rich Rodriguez. This is going to be a different style of defense, a different style of offense. It's not going to be like Rich Rod's, reinventing football, but it's going to be a much different product. You're going to see guys play with, again, I got to go with it here, right? The hard edge. And it's not to say that some of these guys didn't, but I think you're going to see a different motor, a different energy, a different conviction about how they go about things, a different confidence, a different swagger. And that in itself can help you win games 100%. So I think some of the things that really need to be addressed in the offseason. Number one, you got to get a quarterback in here. And I know I've gone on several conversations about this on Twitter, and a lot of people have different feelings about it, and they just say, "I just let Nico be the guy." A coach, and I'm not saying that Nico can't be the guy. So let me just throw that out there. I have confidence that Nico Marchiol can run Rich Rodriguez's offense and run it well. What I'm saying is here, there's 2 points. One, he's not a perfect fit. I mean, if we're going to be completely transparent here, is Rich Rodriguez going to be somebody that goes out and recruits Nico Marchiol out of high school? Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. I personally don't think he does. But he has the tools. He is a willing runner, which is what Rich needs in this offense. He's certainly capable. Number two, any new head coach entering a power four job or really anywhere at this point in the game is going to add to the quarterback room. Now, what level do you pull from? Do you throw a big bag at, a top guy in the portal, or do you go get somebody that's maybe developmental, or do you get somebody that's kind of, has some experience that can just come in and compete and you let the best man win? I don't know. But I would be completely shocked if Rich Rodriguez does not bring in a quarterback out of the transfer portal because you can't just enter year one with a guy that's unproven. That's the cold hard facts. Like I really wish Nico Marchiol well. I hope it works out for him at West Virginia or wherever it is. But you can't go into 2025 with just Nico Marchiol and Ryder Burton. You can't do that. You have to have some sort of, competition. And I don't know that Ryder Burton's quite there. I don't know that Khalil Wilkins is quite there. And you can't just I mean, Nico Marchiol is talented as can be, but he hasn't proven himself yet as a full-time starter. Yes, he's had some spot starts. Yes, he's undefeated as a starter. However, he's never been the guy on a week-to-week basis. Not saying he can't do it. So don't start putting words in my mouth and start thinking that I'm doubting Nico Marchiol. That's not what I'm going with here. I'm just saying from Rich Rod's perspective, he's probably looking at going, yeah, this kid's made a few starts. He's done well, but I need a little bit more insurance going into 2025. And that's okay. You should want competition. Nico should want competition. Every good player wants to be pushed. And I know Nico is that type of player. He's not going to have some thin skin. Nico is a tough-minded player. He's a gritty player. And if you bring in another quarterback from the transfer portal, I don't think it's going to scare him. I don't think it's going to bother him. That's not who he is. He's going to take it for what it is and say, okay, I'm going to go and try and beat this guy. So, number one, you have to go get a quarterback. Doesn't have to be a top tier guy, but you got to find a way to bring competition into this mix. And Nico may end up being the guy anyway, but you have to owe it to your team and really to yourself, Rich, to go and bring in another quarterback to make sure that that quarterback room is in really good shape. Secondly, retention. It's obvious. This is going to be a key for every staff in the country every year. What's it look like? I don't know. There's certain players I think you would want to keep offensively, defensively. Pat McAfee said hey, blow the whole thing up, and he'd be okay with it. And I think probably most West Virginia fans are thinking the same thing. There are some pieces I think defensively you'd like to keep. Yeah, particularly the younger guys, Zay Jennings, Nate Gabriel, Trey Lathan, um, Ricky Williams, linebacker who was battling some injuries this year, didn't get to play a whole lot. Israel Boyce. There's guys on that side of the ball that you'd like to be able to keep around. And I even think Ben Cutter could be somebody that takes a step next year. But you've got to figure out what players you want to bring in or to keep back on this team. And there's going to be some guys that, even though they may be good, don't be afraid, don't be scared or nervous or thinking the world's coming to an end when you see a starter enter the portal. That's very likely to happen. Who is it going to be? I don't know. What side of the ball? I don't know. What level of starter? I don't know. But you're probably going to see at least one starter, if not multiple, that enter the portal. And that's okay. Sky's not falling. All these guys aren't Rich Rod guys. You want Rich Rod to take this team and get his types of guys in there. Thirdly, I've already addressed it. Speed, got to get more of it defensively. And I think, excuse me, I think if you can do that, it makes up for a lot of the issues that they had this year. And lastly, I want to say compete in the portal. There's no sense in just targeting G5 guys or FCS guys. And that there's nothing against those guys. You're going to find really good players from those levels. But there's some Power 4 talent out there that West Virginia really hasn't gone after in the past. Maybe it was because they didn't have the means to. I think that's changed. But, this is a big but, if Ken Kendrick is really committed, if Pat McAfee is really committed, as they say they are, then that assistance needs to be there from the get-go. It can't be let's wait and see or wait for the opportunity for West Virginia to really strike. Maybe it's year 2 or year 3. No, it's got to be right away. They have got to play a pivotal part in this from the jump. They were the ones that were pounding the table for him. Whether they were really pounding the table, I don't think that was the case, but it's very clear their support of him. He's there now. It's time to do their part. Help put this team together so that way in year 1, they can win. It doesn't need to be a process. It doesn't need to be year 2, year 3, year 4. This team can win in year 1 if you help get the pieces in place. Does it have to be at the college football playoff level? No. Does it have to be winning a Big 12 title? No. But can you get to a point where you're winning 8 or 9 games in year 1? Yeah. But you need a little help. Actually, a lot of help. So those guys need to step up. Others that have kind of you got a little bit of deep pockets, they've got to do their part as well. So that's some of the keys, I think, to the offseason. We'll talk a lot about some other things in terms of the transfer portal, signing day in February, which they may sign some other guys there too. Coaching staff hires. We've got a lot to cover this offseason, quite frankly. So we will be here to cover it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button here on our YouTube page at West Virginia on SI. Give us a follow on X at SI_WV. You can follow myself at Callihan_. Thank you guys for watching. Again, programming note, no episode on Sunday. That's technically what would be our next episode because of the basketball game. We'll hold off. We'll do something on Monday, probably talking a little bit about basketball and maybe something, if anything, happens on the football side of things. And then we'll take a week off, get to Sunday to get back to our normal schedule. So Monday is the next show, and then after that, back to our Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday schedule. Thank you guys for watching here on Between the Ears. I'm Schuyler Callihan. We'll talk to you here in a few days. Take care.